So I mentioned that we also talk about how the ocean heals us. And this work really allows us to talk about medicines derived from marine organisms. And we talk specifically about these guys. These are cone snails. They live in the reef environment in the Indo-Pacific mostly. And they have compounds in the marine environment have provided us with some new medicines. And cone snails in particular are a really exciting new area of research for medicinal applications. Most medicine that we use today comes from natural sources, is inspired by natural sources, and scientists estimate that cone snails alone will double the amount of nature we have from medicine. And here's how cone snails, how that story goes. So cone snails hunt their prey by shooting a barb at their prey and stunning it with chemicals that they've coated they have coated their barb with chemicals, and those are stunning the prey before they devour it. The conopeptides, or the chemicals they use, each species manufactures their own unique set of compounds. So you have about 700 species of cone snail, with each species of cone snail manufacturing about 100 or 200 of its own toxins that they use. So you're looking at 140,000 compounds used by cone snails. Just one of those compounds, it's called Prialt as a brand name, has been most investigated and is being used today in hospitals to treat chronic pain. And Prialt really was a medical breakthrough. It's 1,000 times more potent than morphine, and yet it doesn't lead to tolerance. Tolerance is a really huge challenge for treating chronic pain. So you normally would treat chronic pain with opiates. You have to keep increasing the amount to get the same response until you hit a level where you can't give any more morphine, wouldn't be safe, and so the patient is back in pain. So Prialt doesn't cause tolerance, and it's a huge breakthrough for treating chronic pain. And there are other species in the marine environment that are also being investigated for their unique attributes that may help modern medicine. And I want to just say that, of course, when we develop a medicine from a compound like cone snails, we're not collecting the cone snails to provide the compound. We synthesize those compounds in a lab, so much like other medicine that was originally derived from trees and such. But of course, we're losing our coral reef ecosystem. This is just an image of coral bleaching. We think that about 60% of the current reefs are at significant risk. We've destroyed about a quarter of all coral reefs. You guys know this story very well here in Australia on the Great Barrier Reef. With increased stresses we're seeing of climate change, of pollution, we're seeing much more disease. We're seeing new diseases that have never been seen before. And you really get this sense the system is breaking down on a system level. It's sick. And so it's unable to have the resilience to fight off these stresses. And so the story that we tell in our work is that we may be losing medicines and other contributions to our health and well-being before we've even discovered them. Lastly, we talk about how the ocean sustains life on Earth. And this is really a holistic view on how the ocean's role in climate change and providing a livable climate. And then the obvious human health consequences that come with changes in that climate system. I'm not going to talk too much about climate change because I think all of you are very well educated. I'll just show you one example of, or not. Oh, it is. It's not going on my screen. So this is the 2005 hurricane season, and you can see the really warm temperatures in the Atlantic kind of fueling these large storms. This was the year that Katrina made landfall in Louisiana. Obvious human health consequences. And the science is pretty clear that warmer sea surface temperatures are fueling larger storms, so potentially more damaging if they make landfall. Not necessarily the frequency, but the intensity. Lastly, I can't talk about the ocean without talking about plastics. And I'm still working out the direct human health link to how we're being affected by plastic in the ocean. So you guys can help me with that later. But it's become such a problem, and people are becoming more aware of it. So I think it's worth talking about. This is a picture from the North Atlantic Garbage Patch, if you've heard of that. It's basically an area in the Atlantic that's, because of its physics, collecting a lot of the plastic that's in the ocean. It's not a patch, it's not floating on top of the ocean. It's a three-dimensional, it's the plastic through the whole water column. So I tried to capture a little bit on this slide. And basically, we're filling our ocean up with plastic, essentially, is what we are doing. And I find that disturbing on several levels. This is work by Chris Gordon. He's a photographer, and he's an incredible artist. He takes these photographs and he prints them in these huge installations. And from far away, they just look like, you know, a bunch of pixels. And then you realize he's taken one item and reproduced them. The image I usually use is an image of 2 million plastic bottles. So then he'll tell you about the numbers in his explanation. So 2 million plastic bottles is the amount of plastic bottles consumed by Americans anyone want to shout out a number? Any guesses? It's every 5 minutes. This is incredible, right? And I left my reusable water bottle over there, which I really want, but I refuse to do that. So my slide wasn't working for the one I usually use, and so he has some new ones, and this one is incredible. So this is a picture of 2.4 million pieces of plastic. And I haven't verified this statistic. I actually can't believe this statistic, but he said, according to Chris Gordon, 2.4 million pieces of plastic, which is equal to the estimated number of pounds of plastic pollution that enter the world's ocean every hour. So this is a close-up of Mount Fuji that you saw there. All of this was made with plastic that was collected from the Pacific. So this is 2.4 million little pieces of plastic that he collected. 2.4 million pounds enter the ocean every hour. But this is a great segue into what I wanted to end with, which is what I think is a really important part of our work, which is how we communicate with the public about these issues. And I've been very interested in science and art collaboration around trying to interpret these findings in a way that people can relate to and are moved by and are inspired by. And Chris Gordon is a wonderful example of a photographer who's using his skills and his artistry to make some powerful statements. I'm just going to show you a couple more examples. This is Peggy Oki. She's a Japanese woman. She creates these installations where she hangs origami whales and talks about the plight of whales on Earth. This is the Coral Reef Crochet Project. This is the work of Christine and Margaret Wertheim. They're in California. They are crocheting coral reef environments and displaying them in museums and exhibitry all over the world, and then giving an opportunity to talk about the threats to coral reefs that we face today. They've actually created a way that if you crochet, you can crochet part of a reef and build on their exhibits. So I just love the idea of inspiring the crocheters of the world to get interested in ocean conservation. I think that's fantastic. This guy's one of my favorites. This is Eco Elvis. He works in a recycling plant in Kansas City, Missouri by day, and was so moved by the amount of waste that he deals with on a daily basis that he decided to don a green rhinestone-studded suit and sing to the public about it. You know, kind of fun, maybe not totally serious, but really the point is, I think that there's a whole spectrum of ways that people can engage on these issues. And you know, you don't have to get a PhD. You can just find what you do or what you want to do and really find a creative way to talk to people about it. And really, at the end of the day, I think that's what I'm saying is that it's really important that we start talking to people and create in all different kinds of ways about these issues. Whoops.